Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another value-packed TenantCloud podcast. If you want to be a more informed, better educated, and successful landlord, then stay tuned. With over a decade of property management experience, we bring you short and sweet, bite-sized pieces of incredibly valuable property management tidbits in 15 minutes or less. You won't want to miss out as we jump into how online leases are stealing the show and why they are so incredibly valuable and important to your rental, especially today with the current generations who have grown up with nothing but digital access and internet access to just about everything in their life. Let's get started. Jumping right in, we are going to, like I said, be talking today about how online leases are stealing the show. And just so you know, this is based off of one of our recent blogs. You can find it at tenantcloud.com/blog. And then you can just search in the search bar, online leases or stealing the show or any of those keywords, and that'll pull up this article for you if you want to read it a little bit more in detail. Otherwise, we're going to cover pretty much all of it right now. We're going to cover about 5 points as to why you need to make sure that you have online leases. Now, there's two different things. You can either allow leases to be e-signed online, which is awesome. Highly encourage it. Yes, yes, yes. Two is, even if you don't do e-signatures, which I'm not sure why you wouldn't, but if you don't, for whatever reason, you still need to make sure that your online leases are available electronically. And we're going to explain a little bit why that's so important. So, number one reason is obviously it saves time. You know that filling out a document such as a lease agreement by hand can be a strenuous task. Before the whole online lease thing became more popular, when I used to fill out leases by hand, it could take a long time, especially if you have a large property and you have 5, 10, 15 move-ins a week. It just consumes your time. So a lot of online leases allow you to customize the lease ahead of time so that it auto fills in elements, or even just allows you to create a general template where you just plug in a few pieces of information each time you have a new unit instead of having to fill out everything by hand. And if you're not familiar with TenantCloud's system, you can actually create a custom document, a custom agreement that you pull autofill element tags into the form. And so when you move a tenant in, the system fills in all the information for you. There is no filling out anything by hand or custom filling out anything unless you absolutely want to. But the system does it all for you. So regardless of what system you use, it saves you time. 9 times out of 10, it's going to save you time. I know for a fact that the TenantCloud system does save you time. And there were a few platforms that I've been on over the past few years prior to TenantCloud, and they all saved time in one way or another. And so you want to make sure that you are using an online lease from the start simply because of the amount of time it saves you. Number 2, it's more eco-friendly. It is. It's especially if you're not printing stuff off or you only print it off if it's absolutely necessary. It's so much better. I can't explain how awesome it was to switch over to an electronic version of a lease and only print it off if the tenant asked for it, or even have a portal for the tenant to be able to download their own copy and just download it to their phone or whatever whenever they needed it so that they could email it to other people. The amount of times that the lease gets printed off now compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, is so less frequently than it is now today, because so many tenants, especially on TenantCloud, have access to their PDF of their lease through their TenantCloud account. They don't need to ask you for it. Again, that saves you time. Nobody bugging you, asking you for a copy of their lease. They have it on their account. They can see it themselves. They can print it off or just download it if they want to themselves. They can, once they download it, then they can email it to whoever they need to email it to, whether they're applying for another apartment and they need to show proof of prior rental history, or they just need to show it for whatever reason, a job or a loan or whatever it may be. They don't have to come to you asking for it. They don't have to print it off. They can just download it, email it. It's just so much better. The average office worker uses approximately 10,000 sheets of copy paper every year. That is crazy. So switching to digital is essential, especially if you want to cut down on the amount of paper you're using in the office and you want to make going green, or whatever you want to call it, more of a priority than what it is for you today. I highly encourage it. That's where e-signed leases and digital leases are another way they're just so valuable. Number 3, it's usually just more professional. In today's age, everybody's expecting pretty much everything to be online, and everything looks better. It's not, if you've ever worked with leases where you had a master lease and you just kept copying it over and over and over again, and the words just kept getting more distorted and faded, and lines on the paper and so on and so forth. I mean, it gets pretty ridiculous. And the online version, it's never like that, because it's a brand new master version every time somebody signs the lease, looks at the lease, whatever. So it just looks better. It looks more professional. You don't have paper scattered everywhere. You're not sitting there fumbling, trying to make sure they're all in order when you printed them out and stapling them. And it's so much more professional, much more fluid. It's just better for just about everything, really. But also fourth point is it improves the tenant-landlord relationship, and it's more accurate and accessible. And so it's like we touched on in a previous point, it's having it accessible online is extremely important, especially for millennials or Gen Y, whatever you want to call them. They are the current largest rental block demographic in the United States today, meaning there are more millennials renting apartments today or rental properties today than any other generation. And so adapting to what they expect and what they demand and what they prefer is going to set you head and shoulders above other property managers who are still trying to do things the old school way. If they are your target audience, which they automatically are typically because they're just the largest renter block out there, then you want to establish a good relationship with them and have good rapport with them. And they do care about things like being eco-friendly and having digital access and not having to come to you to ask for a copy of their agreement if they lost it or whatever. And so it's just another positive way with the current generation, the current renter generation, to allow them to have online digital access and to e-sign. A lot of times there's people that move into apartments and they've either never seen the property, or B, they saw the property one time, they met you one time, they loved the property, they went home, they ended up applying online, you sent them the agreement online, they uploaded all of their stuff, their proof of income, their copy of their ID, all of that online. Everything was done online. They met you one time to tour the property, or an agent to tour the property, and they never saw you again until maybe the day they moved in to pick up keys. And even then, you may not meet them because maybe you have a lockbox or something. It's just a totally different rental world out there in many areas, and it's all about convenience and access. And the more convenience and the more access that you provide to millennials, the better. And again, that comes back down to something as simple as a lease agreement. And again, just to hammer home this point one more time, a paper document is not as accurate and it's not as accessible. And what I mean by accurate is hand-filled documents are prone to errors. How many times have I had a lease that we had to go back and scratch something out because somebody initialed in the wrong spot or signed in the wrong spot, or I'm having to sit there and guide the tenant through guide them through the signature process and the initial process because I need to make sure that they don't do those things in the wrong places on the document so that there aren't errors on the document. It's a time suck. It's a pain. And so just having an online digital move-in agreement where everything is pre-assigned, the location where they have to initial, it's pre-assigned. They can't make a mistake. The system does it for them. All they have to do is agree to the terms and conditions and say, yes, apply my initials. Yes, apply my signature. And it applies the timestamp and the whole 9 yards. And so it just removes a lot of opportunities for errors, which ends up resulting in a more accurate lease agreement and again, more accessible because it was done online. It's available online. And so, of course, this is a TenantCloud podcast, so it would make sense that I'm going to plug in the TenantCloud lease agreements and the tools here. And those are all the things that TenantCloud provides, which is fantastic. It is one of the most diverse application and screening and lease agreement platforms available online today, especially to the DIY landlords out there who don't have a lot of options for rental property management software. And it's just super, super awesome. The flow and the design of it is great. You create your document, it saves it, you pull in auto element tags. The system automatically pulls in the information for the tenant, their move-in date, all that stuff. And they e-sign it. They have the option to purchase renter's insurance right then and right there. There's no having to go to third-party sites and all this other stuff. They can upload whatever they need to upload. Once they've e-signed it, it's automatically available as a PDF attached in your account and their account. They don't ever have to come to you asking you for a copy of their agreement. And everything, it's much fewer errors unless you made an error when you initially created the agreement, when you create it in the template creation tool. But as long as you've double checked your work when you first created that template and everything, it's so much better. It's available. It's right there. It's paperless. It's eco-friendly. It's accurate. It's accessible, the whole 9 yards. So I think I've hammered home on that enough. Let me know what you think anywhere that you hear this podcast. Feel free to chime in. Let us know what you do to make sure that you are appealing to the current renter blocks and your target demographics, and maybe some ideas that you have incorporated into your leasing process to make things more efficient. We'd love to hear it. And if anything I've missed, feel free to chime in. And again, if you want to read the blog on this, feel free to go to tenantcloud.com/blog and just type into the search bar how online leases are stealing the show. And you can also comment there. And remember to follow us anywhere that you hear this podcast, whether it's on Stitcher or Google or Apple Podcasts. We'd love to stay in touch with you, and we'll look forward to talking with you next time.